All right, then now that we've set up our Redux, let's just see how it works on our dev tool. So let's go into our dev tool and just see. And let me go to Redux. So if you don't have this, just go into add-ons and just search Redux dev tool. And you can see we have our state right here. Yeah, we have categories. Is equal to phone. So I'm just trying to like um, so I was just trying to like set some values. So I think I've reset that. So if we refresh now, that state should have been reset. Okay, now you can see our category is an empty, is an empty object, is an empty array. So what we can do right here is we can dispatch some actions, but then let's just go ahead and start building this from our application. So let's go into our front-end application, and let's go into our views. I think landing and go into index. Okay, so now that we're getting our data from the endpoint, what we need to do is we need to connect this particular component to, we need to actually connect it with the with Redux, and we're going to be doing this with React Redux. So let's just go ahead and do that. So we're just going to import connect from React Redux. This is very simple, guys. We're just going to import connect, and right here what we just need to do is let me just bring this down because we don't want to keep an eye on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass some values to this React connect. So the first value is we want to create a constant, and the first thing we want to do, we want to map state to props. Okay, so what this is just going to do to us is the state that we have in Redux, the state that we created in Redux, we want to actually map this to the props of this particular component. So to actually do that, we can say state, but then it won't be good if we do it this way. So we want to destructure the category. So if you remember in our reducer, let me just say, in our reducer, the name for this is category. So we need to actually destructure the state that we need. Okay, so I'm going to say category. Okay, so if you're confused, this is where it is. I think this is where it is. You can see we're mapping the category to this, so that's why we're using the lowercase. So we're actually using the name that we give to it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And we can now do this. This is actually a function. Yeah, so we want to also destructure categories. Okay, because if we should go into our reducers, we have categories. We want to actually get values for these categories. So we're going to destructure that. We're going to say categories. I want to actually destructure that from the category. Okay, hope this makes sense. And right now we need to actually return a value. So we're going to return categories. So hope this makes sense to you. And if you have more than just one value that you want to get from the state, you can also destructure that from the state and actually return that value. So another thing, so that's just it. And another thing that we need to pass is we need to actually pass this action. Okay, so right here we created an action that will save all the categories we're getting from the endpoint into it's going to dispatch those actions and make changes into the reducer or into the category reducers. We also need to actually bring this into our component. So to do that, we're going to map dispatch. Okay, you map dispatch to props. Okay, there are many ways to actually go around this, but this is like the most cleanest way I see, because some people prefer to actually bring their actions and everything to the component itself and actually run it from there, but I don't actually like that method. So we're going to say create categories. Okay, so this will come from the action now. Okay, we still need to import the values, but then this is just all we need to do. And right here, we're just going to pass the two values that we just created. The first one is we're going to pass the map state to props. We're going to pass the map state to props, and we're going to also pass the map dispatch to props. Okay, so this makes sense, right? So this makes sense, right? So we need to actually import that value. So we're going to say import. We're going to import set categories from React actions. Okay, so that's all we need to do. And right here, everything has been mapped to the props now. And if we should do a console.log on props, and let's just go and check that our console, and let's just see that. So you can see we have the categories, which is an empty array, and we have the set category, which is actually a method, a function rather. So we can go ahead and destructure those and we can go ahead and destructure those from the props. So get categories and categories. Okay, so we're actually destructuring that. Now we have access to the method, and right here we just need to dispatch that action right now because we have access to that action. So the action is get categories, and right now we're just going to say categories, which is the value that we're assigning the return response from the API to. Okay, so we have two categories right now, which we actually might lead to some issues. So let's just give this a very simple name. So let's just say category. So let's just singularize it, category, and this will be data. Okay, so this will be data, and I think that's all. That's just all we need to do. And yeah, so this will actually, what this is actually going to do right what this is actually going to do right now is it's going to dispatch that particular action. So if we should go to our Redux, you can see the action has been dispatched. You can see the action has been dispatched right here. Okay, so the action type is save categories, and we have some errors right here, and let's just see. I think we're making a mistake somewhere. So let's go back into our reducer, and these categories. All right, everything seems fine right here. So let me see if the error is coming from the action. Everything looks fine from here. So yeah, I think I see where there's actually an error. So this is not required. Yeah, so this is actually import. Okay, import from. Okay, this might okay, so let's go ahead and refresh, and let's just refresh that and see. Yeah, so we have that. We're still getting an empty. So all right, I could see where the error is. This is actually undefined from the endpoint. So let's just see where that is actually wrong. So let's see that. Let's say the data we get from our endpoint. So this is a promise request. Yeah, so that's a promise request. So we need to actually structure this properly. So what we can do is we can create a hook. We can actually create a hook. But before then, let's just go ahead and do away with this. So let's create a custom method, and this will be constant. And let's just call it get categories. Okay, categories. Instead of putting our logic use uh, within the use effect hook. Okay, so let's just do that and put this. Let's just put this within. Yeah, and this is all we need to do for now. So let's just put this in a probably in a try and catch block so that we can actually get uh, catch some error. So yeah, I'm just going to console.log on error. So if you're actually working, you might if you're actually working on a real project, you might want to handle your errors better. Probably create like a service that handles error, and you then use that to actually um, display the errors that you're getting from the response to the user. So we're just going to call this endpoint once we're done, and we're just going to call the method rather. So this should do the same thing. That should do the same thing. And let's just see. We have an error right here. Let's just refresh. That should be gone because yeah, that should be gone. So let's check our readers. We're still getting no values, and from our endpoint, we're getting a lot of data. So to actually fix this, let's try and create like a custom hook that actually shows uh, if the endpoint is fetching the data, like a loading effect. So let's just try and create that, and we can then handle the data that we're getting. So let's just go ahead and create that right now. So we go into our hooks, and right here we're going to say this to be with uh, use loading. Okay, so instead of creating it in your components, you can just create a hook for it. I think this would be better. So what we're going to do is import use we want to import use state from React. uh, we can now create a constant, say use loading, and this will be a method. And right there, we want to now use this will be loading. I want to set loading. Okay, and for the default value, we want to set it to be false. Okay, so the loading will be set to false on by default, and let's just go ahead and say with create a new method and say with loading, and this will be an async method. Okay, so right here we want to actually resolve a promise. Okay, because we actually want to resolve a promise. So if you don't know what promise is, please read more on it. So promise is just when you're trying to get something, but you don't know what it is, but you're trying to get it. So when the promise is finally resolved, that's when you get a response. So you can actually read more on promise. So we're going to say loading is true. So before we actually resolve that promise, we're going to set the loading to be true, and we're going to put this in a cache, try and cache block. So for the error, I'm just going to, when we have an error, I'm just going to say set loading to be false. Okay, so when we actually get an error, we're going to say set loading to false, and we can then throw error. Okay, okay, like I told you, you can actually handle this better.